They thought it was just an old Terran ship drifting in space, a harmless relic from a forgotten age. But one scan awakened a machine of war, a dreadnought built to destroy entire fleets. Its eyes opened, weapons charged, intelligence unmatched. The galaxy realized too late the humans they underestimated were far from extinct. Subscribe now to witness the awakening of a monster no one could escape. The alien reconnaissance ship moved quietly through the cold space at the edge of the disputed star system, its engines humming softly as it followed its usual patrol route. The crew on board had done this same patrol hundreds of times, and to them, it felt like just another boring day. They expected nothing unusual, nothing dangerous, nothing worth reporting. They believed the region was safe, empty, and forgotten by every major power in the galaxy. The stars outside looked calm, and the scanners showed nothing but space dust and old satellite debris drifting slowly. The crew chatted casually, half asleep, trusting their technology to warn them if anything serious appeared. But fate had a different plan. As the patrol ship moved deeper into the quiet zone, a faint energy signature flickered across their sensors. It was weak, unstable, and unlike anything they had seen in years. The technician at the console frowned and leaned closer, tapping the panel to refresh the scan. He thought it might be a glitch or interference from cosmic radiation. The others didn't even look up at first, because strange readings were common and usually meaningless. But then the signal returned, stronger this time, clearer, almost like a heartbeat in the void. The crew slowly gathered around the screen, curious now. The signature was coming from an object drifting several thousand kilometers ahead of them. It wasn't a natural formation or a random piece of metal. It had structure, weight, and design. Someone had built it long ago. The commander straightened up, suddenly more alert than he had been in hours. He ordered the ship to slow down and directed the scanners to focus on the object. Still, nobody felt fear. They believed it was probably an old cargo vessel or a broken escort ship from a forgotten conflict. Nothing dangerous, nothing powerful. As they approached, the object finally appeared in the external cameras. It floated silently, its huge dark hull glinting faintly in the starlight. The crew stared at it with growing interest. It didn't match any modern design they knew. The edges were sharper, the shape older, heavier, built for battles they had only heard about in archived stories. One of the analysts whispered that it could be a relic from the early Terran Wars, but his voice was filled more with excitement than fear. Terran technology was considered outdated, slow, and harmless compared to modern fleets. No one in that room imagined the danger sleeping inside that ship. The patrol crew began to joke among themselves, calling it a ghost ship, guessing how old it might be, and wondering whether the Terrans who once used it had even survived in the galaxy. They were convinced humanity was too weak to matter anymore, and that this ship was nothing more than an ancient piece of metal drifting through time. Their laughter mixed with the soft beeps of the scanners, creating a false sense of comfort. They felt safe, in control, and almost proud that they were the first to find such an artifact. The commander finally decided they should perform a basic scan, just to record the structure and send it back to the Coalition database. He didn't think twice about it. To him, this was routine work, something simple that would keep their patrol report from sounding empty. He ordered his technician to begin the deep scan, expecting the process to take only a few minutes. The crew leaned back, relaxed again, unaware of the storm they were about to unleash. As the patrol ship drifted closer, the silent warship remained still, giving no hint of the power hidden in its core. It looked dead, abandoned, forgotten, and harmless. The alien crew saw nothing but a relic, a reminder of a species long underestimated. They had no idea that their scanners were about to touch the wrong system inside that ship. They had no idea that it was not truly asleep. They had no idea that something ancient was waiting deep inside. Something that interpreted every external scan as a threat. And in just a few more moments, their quiet, boring patrol would become the most terrifying mission they had ever experienced. The technicians began their deep scan with full confidence, believing the strange vessel ahead was nothing more than an old, powerless relic. The scanning beams swept across the dark hull, reading metal density, structure layers, and internal chambers. At first, everything looked ordinary, exactly what they expected from ancient Terran engineering. The outer armor was thick but aged, scratched by centuries of drifting through empty space. The crew relaxed again, whispering jokes about how Terrans had once thought themselves mighty with such primitive designs. They saw nothing dangerous, nothing impressive, nothing worth worrying about. But the deeper the scan went, the stranger the results became. The sensors began picking up alloys that were not registered in their database, metals that modern civilizations did not use. Some of these materials had impossible strength readings, stronger than any known Starship plating. The technician controlling the scan frowned as he compared results. His fingers tapped nervously on the panel, refreshing the data again and again. Maybe there was interference, he thought, or a malfunction. But each new scan returned the same unexpected signals. The warship was made of something far beyond simple Terran iron and steel. Inside the ship, the scanners detected strange power channels running through the walls. They weren't standard electrical circuits. They looked more like energy veins, connecting the whole vessel like a living creature. Even stranger were the dormant systems buried deep in the ship's core, systems that the aliens couldn't identify at all. The readings didn't match any known engine, weapon, or reactor type. It was as if the ship had been built with technology from a forgotten era, something far more advanced than the alien crew had ever studied. This discovery erased the smiles from their faces. Curiosity was slowly turning into concern. The commander leaned over the technician's shoulder, scanning the results with his sharp eyes. He asked for a full internal mapping, wanting to know what was hidden at the center of the ship. The technician obeyed, sending a stronger pulse into the vessel. For a moment, everything seemed quiet. The beam slipped past the hull, passing through dusty corridors and abandoned control rooms. The crew watched with fascination, imagining the long-gone Terran soldiers who once walked inside those halls. They wondered why such a massive ship had been abandoned, and what mission it had been built for long ago. But then the scanners reached a sealed chamber near the heart of the warship, and the entire control room fell silent. The energy reading suddenly spiked, bright and sharp, like a pulse of heat. The technician's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. The chamber wasn't empty. It contained a dense, compact core filled with dormant energy that should not have existed after so many centuries. The power levels recorded were impossible for a dead ship. It was as though something inside that chamber was still alive, waiting, conserving strength in complete silence. One of the analysts nervously suggested that the energy could be part of an ancient Terran reactor system, but even he didn't believe his own guess. The readings were too stable, too precise, too advanced for a ship this old. Another technician whispered that maybe the ship had been modified by someone after humanity disappeared, maybe upgraded by another unknown species. But no one could explain how or why. The more they scanned, the less sense the vessel made. As the scan dug deeper into the core, they detected a strange pattern, a repeating signal. It wasn't random, it was organized, structured, almost like a coded message buried beneath the energy field. The commander ordered the scan to slow down so they could analyze the signal, but the technician hesitated. His instincts warned him that pushing further might not be safe. Yet, orders were orders, and he finally continued, increasing the beam's intensity to break through the core's defenses. That decision changed everything. The moment the beam hit the center of the chamber, the entire alien ship trembled. Their scanners overloaded with a burst of unfamiliar data, then completely froze. Every screen went white for a split second before flooding with warning symbols. The crew jumped back, shocked and confused. Something inside the Terran warship had reacted to the scan. Something powerful, something awake. The technician tried to stop the scan, but it was too late. The signal they had been reading suddenly spiked like a heartbeat, strong and aggressive, as if the ship itself had felt the intrusion. The alien crew looked at each other with growing fear. The confidence they had earlier was gone, replaced by an uneasy silence. They realized that the vessel they were scanning wasn't a harmless relic. It was watching them back, sensing them, responding to their presence. They had wanted answers, but now a far more dangerous truth surrounded them. The Terran warship was not dead at all. It was dormant, waiting, and their scan had just touched the very thing that kept it asleep. Now, something inside was beginning to stir, and the alien crew had no idea what they had awakened. The moment the deep scan touched the hidden chamber inside the Terran warship, a reaction began that none of the alien crew had expected. What looked like a dead relic suddenly behaved like a sleeping giant, disturbed from its rest. Deep within the ship, ancient circuits lit up for the first time in centuries. The dark corridors, silent and frozen in time, flickered with faint red lights, tiny sparks traveling along metal walls coated in dust. It felt as if the ship itself was inhaling after a very long sleep. The aliens watching their screens didn't see these details, but they felt the change through the violent shift in their scanners. Something was waking up, something powerful and old. The technician's hands shook as he tried to stop the scan, but the ship's internal systems were already responding on their own. At the core of the vessel, a sealed cube-shaped device pulsed with deep blue light. This was the heart of the warship, a reactor designed by Terran engineers who believed in survival at any cost. It was not just a power generator, it was a living defense system built with artificial intelligence far beyond anything the aliens knew. When the scan hit it, the AI interpreted the intrusion as a direct threat. For centuries, it had waited in darkness, its purpose frozen but not forgotten. Now, with the foreign energy beam entering its chamber, it activated its first protocol, Awakening Mode. Ancient Terran code raced across hidden screens inside the warship faster than any alien computer could track. The old system rebooted layer by layer, checking weapons, engines, shields, and tactical memories that had been locked away. Back on the reconnaissance vessel, the crew struggled to understand what was happening. Their scanners showed a sudden surge in energy output far too strong to belong to an ancient ship. It was as if a modern super dreadnought had just powered up right in front of them. The readings were unstable yet rising at a terrifying speed. The crew stared at the numbers in disbelief. The commander ordered a full stop, demanding an immediate shutdown of all scanning activity. But the strange part was that the scan had already turned itself off, because the Terran warship had taken control of every frequency around it. The patrol ship felt as if invisible hands were gripping it, analyzing it in return. The aliens felt exposed, as if they had become the ones being scanned. Inside the warship, the awakening spread like fire. Emergency lights hummed, old screens brightened, and databanks filled with maps of forgotten battles loaded themselves. The AI started identifying the surrounding environment, reading temperature, distance, and motion. It detected the alien vessel nearby and immediately marked it as a potential enemy. The instructions written centuries ago were simple and absolute. If the ship senses a threat, awaken and prepare for defense. The AI did not understand peace. It did not understand curiosity. It only understood survival and war. And in its judgment, the aliens had just attacked it by scanning its core. The aliens watched in shock as their instruments reacted to a pulse of energy coming from the warship. This pulse was not random. It had structure, rhythm, and purpose. The ship was transmitting encrypted Terran signals that no species had heard in centuries. The technicians tried to decode the messages but couldn't. They were too advanced, too old, and too complex. The commander felt sweat gather on his forehead. He realized they had crossed a line without knowing it. They had triggered something ancient and dangerous, something that had been designed for war on a scale they could not imagine. The Terran warship's engines began to warm up, not fully active yet, but no longer dead. The hull vibrated softly as internal systems came alive. One by one, its weapon systems unlocked from their dormant state. Inside a hidden armory, massive plasma cannons hummed faintly. Missile bays recalibrated themselves, and targeting lenses rotated as if stretching after a long sleep. Every system behaved like a warrior waking from a deep coma, confused but ready to fight the moment it recognized a threat. The ship did not ask for orders. It followed its last command, a command written by humans long gone. Protect the Terran legacy at all costs. Meanwhile, panic grew inside the alien reconnaissance ship. The crew tried to retreat, but their engines hesitated as the Terran ship's energy field interfered with their systems. They felt trapped, like prey caught in the gaze of a predator that had just opened its eyes. The technician checking the power readings whispered that the warship now had more energy flowing through it than a modern command fleet. The commander stared at the drifting giant ahead of them and finally understood the horrifying truth. They had not found a relic. They had awakened a machine of war, a machine built by a species the galaxy had underestimated for too long. The final moment came when the warship's internal AI activated its external sensors and saw the alien vessel clearly for the first time in centuries. In that instant, the awakening was complete. The ship knew it had been disturbed, and it knew who had done it. The ancient dreadnought was no longer sleeping. Its heart was beating again. With a cold, unstoppable purpose, the aliens had awakened a monster, and now they had no idea how to survive the consequences. The control room of the alien reconnaissance ship fell into complete silence as the Terran Warship's energy levels continued to rise. The soft, calm lights inside their own vessel began to flicker, not because of any malfunction, but because the warship's power output was so massive that it interfered with every nearby system. The technicians stared at their screens, their eyes wide, hands shaking. Their scanners were no longer giving clear readings, instead showing violent spikes that made no sense. It felt like trying to measure the heartbeat of a creature far too large to understand. Every second, the readings grew stronger, brighter, sharper, as if something inside that ancient ship had fully awakened and was now testing its strength. The commander demanded updates, his voice shaking despite his attempt to sound calm. The crew tried to explain, but their words tumbled out in fragments. They had no way to interpret what was happening. The power readings were beyond any known classification. Their instruments were designed to measure modern warships, trading convoys, normal reactors, not something built by humans in an age when humanity had prepared for extinction-level warfare. The systems inside the Terran ship were ancient but monstrous, designed to overpower entire fleets. The aliens had heard legends about Terran dreadnoughts, but none of them believed those stories were real. Now, seeing the energy spike so violently, some of them finally understood why those stories had survived for so many centuries. Warning symbols filled every holographic screen, bright red and flashing rapidly. They were simple messages, but terrifying ones. Threat detected, unknown weapon systems online, energy levels unstable, retreat recommended. But retreat was not as simple as it sounded. The alien ship's engines were being disrupted by the enormous electromagnetic waves pouring out of the Terran warship. It was like trying to fly a fragile shuttle near a star coming back to life. Every system felt heavy, slow, almost suffocated by the pressure of the dreadnought's power. The crew could feel the vibrations through the floor, as though the space around them was bending and shifting. The technician closest to the energy analysis console gasped as he zoomed into the readings. The warship wasn't activating just one or two systems. It was waking up everything at once. Dozens of dormant subsystems came online in rapid succession, and each one produced more energy than a modern battleship. It was as if the ship had been built with layers upon layers of technology, each hidden under the other, each ready to activate when needed. The technician could hardly speak as he showed the commander a diagram of the power distribution. It looked like veins inside a living creature, energy flowing through them like blood. The commander stared at the image, unable to process how such an ancient design could be so efficient and terrifying at the same time. Then the next wave of panic hit the crew. The sensors started picking up weapon activity inside the warship. At first, the readings were faint, small flickers that could have been errors. But soon the truth became clear. Weapon systems were powering up, massive ones, weapons that the alien crew didn't even recognize. Some of the readings showed plasma signatures, others showed gravitational distortions. The ship had weapons that could tear apart fleets, crush cruisers, and vaporize planets. The crew realized they had disturbed something that was not just powerful, but unstoppable. A machine built for destruction on a scale they had never imagined. One of the younger crew members whispered that they should try to send a peaceful message, maybe explain the scan had been accidental. But the technician running communications shook his head helplessly. The Terran ship wasn't listening. Its external systems were scanning them in return, treating them like an enemy target. The alien vessel felt like a mouse sitting in front of a waking lion. Every second, the warship looked more alive, more aware, more ready to act. The crew felt powerless, trapped in the middle of a storm they had created without meaning to. The commander tried to maintain order, shouting new instructions, telling his team to reroute power to shields. But even the shields flickered weakly, unable to stabilize under the pressure of the dreadnought's energy field. The crew knew that if the Terran Warship fired even one weapon, they would be destroyed instantly. The alien ship wasn't built for combat on this level. It was only a reconnaissance vessel, light, fast, and fragile, never meant to face a monster from humanity's forgotten age of war. Fear spread through the room like cold smoke. One technician dropped his tools, another stepped back from his station as if distance could protect him. They all realized something that froze their blood. They hadn't provoked a sleeping machine. They had provoked a warrior, a relic forged in the heart of humanity's darkest wars, a warship built not to negotiate, but to annihilate threats without hesitation. And now, that warship was slowly turning its attention toward them, its awakening nearly complete, its power unmatched. The aliens knew they were in mortal danger, and they had no idea how to escape the monster they had brought back to life. The alien commander stared at the readings, disbelief and fear twisting together in his mind. He finally remembered fragments of ancient archives, stories of Terran dreadnoughts that had survived long after humanity's fall. The archives spoke of massive warships designed not just to fight, but to think, to repair themselves, to adapt to enemies no one could imagine. They were said to be so powerful that entire fleets had been destroyed by a single dreadnought during the Terran Wars. These ships had been the pride and terror of humanity, feared across the galaxy and thought lost forever. But now, staring at the energy readings and the activation of weapon systems, the commander realized that one of these mythical ships was alive again, right in front of them. He gathered his senior officers, and their eyes reflected the same growing panic. None of them had believed the old stories. They had laughed at the notion that a human warship could survive centuries untouched. Yet here it was, its power rising with each passing second. The AI systems of the dreadnought were ancient but extremely intelligent, able to read and respond to threats faster than any alien technology. Every sensor, every engine, every weapon system activated itself in perfect sequence, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. The realization hit them all at once. They were not just facing an old ship. They were facing a living legacy of a species the galaxy had underestimated. The technicians scrambled to understand the capabilities of the dreadnought, but the data was overwhelming, too complex to interpret quickly. The ship's hull was massive, but it moved with surprising speed. Its shields were unmatched, designed to absorb attacks that could obliterate entire fleets. Weapons that had been dormant for centuries now hummed with deadly potential. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and energy beams waited silently for a command to strike. The warship had its own intelligence, its own judgment, and it had just determined that the alien vessel in front of it was a threat. The reconnaissance team realized in terror that they were dealing with a machine that could calculate, adapt, and destroy in ways they could not imagine. One officer tried to recall the old Terran battle strategies from the archives, desperate to find a clue on how to survive. But the dreadnought was built to fight alone, to function independently of human command. It had no loyalty to anything but its mission, to defend humanity's legacy. The alien crew realized the terrifying truth. By scanning the ship, they had unknowingly presented themselves as enemies. The AI had interpreted their actions as aggression, and now it was preparing to retaliate. Every subsystem that had awakened added to the dreadnought's already overwhelming strength, making it almost impossible to escape unscathed. The aliens could only watch as the machine came to life like a predator sensing prey. The reconnaissance commander tried to reason with the AI, sending messages of peace, explanations that the scan had been accidental, and that no harm was intended. But the dreadnought's sensors ignored these attempts. They were designed to detect intent through actions, not words. The scan alone had been enough to trigger the defensive protocols. The warship's targeting systems aligned, focusing on the alien vessel, its massive sensors scanning for vulnerabilities. The alien ship felt like an insect under a microscope, completely exposed, completely helpless. The dreadnought did not move yet, but its presence was enough to send waves of fear through the crew. They understood that one wrong step could mean total annihilation, Panic spread, and the alien officers began to argue among themselves. Some suggested immediate retreat, others urged calm while trying to assess the situation. But the commander knew that strategy mattered little against such overwhelming power. They had awakened a machine beyond their comprehension. It was no longer just a ship. It was a monster of war, an unstoppable force with centuries of preparation built into every system. The archives had warned of these ships, but no one had truly believed. They were designed for survival and destruction, and now the aliens were witnessing it firsthand. As the dreadnought powered its systems fully, its energy signature alone illuminated the space around it like a small star. The crew could feel it through their instruments, a presence so immense that it made everything else seem insignificant. They finally understood why the Terrans had been feared for so long. Their technology was not just advanced, it was designed to endure, to fight, to strike fear into anyone who challenged it. The aliens had thought they were discovering a relic, but they had provoked a monster. One wrong action had unleashed something that no ordinary fleet could confront. And the galaxy would soon understand that Terran power had never truly faded. The moment the Terran warship fully awakened, its sensors locked onto the alien reconnaissance vessel. Every system inside the dreadnought operated with perfect precision, as if it had been built not just for survival, but to hunt. Its targeting arrays scanned the alien ship from every angle, mapping weaknesses, calculating distances, and predicting potential maneuvers. The aliens could feel the intensity even before the first weapon came online. Their screens displayed a flood of data, numbers and graphs changing too fast for them to process. The Dreadnought's AI did not hesitate. It analyzed them instantly, tagging them as a threat that needed to be neutralized. The reconnaissance ship felt small, fragile, and exposed, like an insect under a magnifying glass. Every pulse from the warship's sensors felt like a heartbeat, steady, inevitable, and filled with purpose. The alien commander tried to maintain order, shouting instructions to his crew, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. The crew scrambled to respond, trying to reroute energy to shields and weapons, but the dreadnought's presence disrupted all their systems. Their communications were unstable, sensors jittered, engines faltered slightly. The alien ship was no longer in control. It was being observed and calculated with terrifying efficiency. The dreadnought's AI treated everything as data. Every movement, every decision, every slight delay, feeding it into its calculations for defense and attack. The reconnaissance team realized with growing horror that they were being measured against centuries of Terran war experience, encoded into a single machine. Inside the dreadnought, weapon systems hummed softly at first, barely noticeable but growing steadily. The massive cannons, missile bays, and energy arrays began cycling through tests, calibrating themselves against the alien ship. Each weapon was ancient but incredibly advanced, capable of targeting with accuracy far beyond anything in the current galaxy. The AI didn't need to fire to assert dominance. Just the act of powering up sent electromagnetic waves and energy pulses that rattled the alien sensors. Their instruments were flooded with readings showing destructive potential that dwarfed the largest fleets they had ever seen. It became clear that this was not a ship to negotiate with. It was a force designed for annihilation. The alien crew attempted to send peaceful transmissions, messages stating that their scan was accidental, that they meant no harm, but the dreadnought ignored them. It could not interpret words or intentions, only actions. Only energy signatures and scans mattered to its ancient logic. The intrusion had been detected, the threat assessed, and the response calculated. Any further action from the aliens would be monitored in real time. Their movements, their energy use, their attempts at retreat, everything was being analyzed. The dreadnought did not feel anger. It did not feel curiosity. It did not feel mercy. It felt only calculation and purpose. Its mission was clear, and the aliens had become a target, whether they intended to be or not. The reconnaissance ship tried to maneuver, engines straining against the sudden interference in space caused by the dreadnought's power field. But the more they moved, the more the warship tracked them, adjusting its internal targeting systems in perfect harmony. It was as if the ship could anticipate their moves before they made them. The crew felt trapped, helpless, and acutely aware of the imbalance of power. Even a single weapon discharge from the dreadnought could obliterate them in moments. Yet the dreadnought held its fire, observing, analyzing, and ensuring that the alien vessel remained within its field of measurement. The aliens understood that it was waiting for a final decision or mistake that would justify its attack. As the dreadnought's external sensors swept across the alien ship, it detected patterns in energy usage, structural weaknesses, and propulsion output. Its internal AI calculated thousands of possible outcomes for any engagement. Every defensive move by the aliens, every adjustment to shields or engines was immediately logged and counter-analyzed. They realized that no fleet in the galaxy could withstand a ship like this, not because of firepower alone, but because of intelligence, adaptability, and centuries of war knowledge encoded into one unstoppable vessel. The alien commander could only watch as the dreadnought systems completed their assessment, understanding fully that their presence alone had provoked this monster, and that retreat might no longer be an option. The dreadnought continued to track the reconnaissance vessel without firing, yet its presence alone was enough to paralyze the alien crew with fear. Every pulse, every scan, every energy spike was a reminder that this was a living weapon, a machine designed to survive and destroy. The aliens now knew that one wrong move, one miscalculated maneuver, could end their mission and their lives instantly. They were staring into the heart of a legend, a myth brought back to terrifying life. And the dreadnought was ready to act on its own judgment, cold, precise, and unstoppable. The reconnaissance team understood a terrifying truth. Humanity's power had never been gone. It had been sleeping, and now it was fully awake. The alien reconnaissance crew knew they had to act quickly. The Terran Warship had fully awakened, its sensors locking onto them like a predator tracking its prey. Every system on their vessel was strained as they tried to retreat, but the dreadnought's presence interfered with their engines, shields, and communications. The ship felt heavy, sluggish, as though space itself had become thick around them. Every second counted, and the crew could feel the danger pressing closer with each heartbeat. The commander barked orders, trying to rally the terrified crew, telling them to increase engine output, to divert power to shields, to reroute energy away from non-essential systems. But it was like trying to swim against a flood. The dreadnought's field of energy disrupted everything, slowing their response and making the smallest actions feel monumental. They attempted a series of evasive maneuvers, banking hard to the left, accelerating then braking, hoping to confuse the dreadnought's sensors. But the warship anticipated each move, its targeting arrays adjusting with impossible speed. Its external sensors measured every ripple of energy, every motion, every heat signature, as if it had a mind of its own. The aliens realized with growing horror that no standard tactics would work here. This was a machine built not just to survive, but to dominate, to adapt to every move. Their fleet training, their advanced technology, even their experience in countless encounters with hostile ships counted for nothing against a warship from a long-forgotten age of Terran warfare. It was as if they were facing a ghost of history, a nightmare from the galaxy's past made real. Drones and scout ships that had accompanied the reconnaissance vessel were the first to be lost. One moment they were transmitting data, the next their signals vanished. Shredded by energy pulses from the dreadnought, the crew watched helplessly, knowing that any mistake could destroy their main vessel as well. Panic rose like a tide. But the commander held his voice steady, issuing instructions with clarity born of desperation, telling pilots to maintain distance, technicians to focus on shields, and analysts to track the warship's energy output in real time. They had to understand it if they wanted to survive. They had to learn its limits while it already knew theirs. The dreadnought itself did not fire immediately, but every action it took felt like a warning. Its engines glowed faintly, a soft light that illuminated the vastness of space around it. The massive hull moved with a terrifying grace, adjusting its position as if it could anticipate the aliens' every move. Its weapon systems hummed, testing, calibrating, ready to strike at the slightest provocation. The crew could feel the raw power radiating through space, their instruments buzzing, screens flashing warnings that seemed endless. Every pulse from the warship was a reminder that they were at the mercy of something beyond comprehension. They realized that the ship was learning, calculating, and preparing to act. They could not fight it, they could not reason with it, and escape was the only hope. As they attempted a final burst of acceleration, the alien ship's engines strained to their limit. Some systems overloaded under the immense energy field emanating from the dreadnought, causing sparks and temporary failures. The crew's hearts pounded, knowing that one wrong adjustment could trigger catastrophic damage. Every twist and turn of their vessel was monitored by the warship's AI, feeding data back into its calculation systems. The aliens understood that they were in a chase against a machine that could predict, adapt, and respond faster than they could think. Their escape depended on timing, skill, and a little luck, all of which were dwindling with every passing second. Finally, after tense minutes that felt like hours, the alien ship managed to break free of the warship's immediate range. Engines screaming, shields barely holding. They had lost drones, sensors, and equipment along the way. But the main vessel remained intact, shaking with exhaustion and fear. The crew sat in stunned silence, staring at the dark space behind them where the dreadnought had remained, waiting, watching, ensuring that they had learned their lesson. The reconnaissance commander exhaled slowly, realizing that they had survived only by chance. The Terran warship had not fired, but its power, presence, and intelligence had been more than enough to make them understand the danger. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and they had now seen why. A single warship, long thought lost, could challenge an entire fleet, and the aliens had just been given a terrifying demonstration of its might. The alien reconnaissance vessel limped away from the Terran warship, its engines pushed to the absolute limit, shields flickering and failing in places. The crew sat in tense silence, trying to process the terrifying encounter they had just survived. Every screen still displayed warning symbols, energy surges, and weapon calibrations that they had barely escaped. They had expected to find an abandoned relic, a ship that had long been forgotten, but instead they had provoked a machine of war, something ancient, something powerful, something that had been designed to erase entire fleets if challenged. The realization sank in slowly. Humanity had never truly disappeared. It had only been waiting in the shadows, and now its presence had been made known once again. The commander finally broke the silence, his voice low and filled with awe. He ordered the crew to document everything, every reading, every sensor spike, every response from the dreadnought. They had to understand what they had encountered, not just for themselves, but for the entire coalition. News of this encounter would have to reach the High Council immediately. The implications were enormous. If one Terran dreadnought had survived and could operate independently, there might be others, and each one could be as powerful, intelligent, and unstoppable as the one they had just faced. Back on the dreadnought, the AI had completed its first assessment, the alien ship had retreated, but the machine had marked it, recorded its energy signature, and analyzed every movement. It did not celebrate victory. It did not feel relief. It was a machine of war, and its purpose was now clear. Humanity's legacy would remain protected at all costs. The ship's sensors continued to sweep the empty space, checking for other potential threats, ready to respond to any provocation. Its awakening was now complete, and the galaxy had been given a warning. Whether any species believed it or not, the age of underestimating humanity had ended. As the aliens transmitted their report to the High Council, panic spread through the command centers of multiple allied species. Leaders and strategists tried to comprehend the data. Their scanners had confirmed it. The dreadnought was active. It had weapons that could rival an entire fleet. And its AI had intelligence that far surpassed anything known. The Council realized a harsh truth. They had misjudged humanity completely. They had assumed Terrans were extinct, weak, and irrelevant. They had assumed that any ancient warships would have decayed into useless scrap by now. But the encounter proved otherwise. One mistake, one accidental scan, had awakened a monster, and the galaxy would have to respect the consequences. Meanwhile, the alien reconnaissance crew tried to repair their damaged vessel, but the memory of the dreadnought's power remained etched in their minds. They could still feel the presence of the warship, as if it were watching them even from a distance. Every spike in their instruments reminded them of how fragile they were. The commander spoke quietly to his crew, warning them that any future missions near Terran space would have to be reconsidered. Every contact with this long-hidden species now carried unimaginable risk. They had not simply discovered an abandoned warship. They had announced themselves to a civilization whose power no one dared underestimate. Back on the Terran dreadnought, the AI had analyzed the encounter, storing the alien ship's data in its memory banks. It had learned, calculated, and improved its understanding of potential threats. Its systems remained on high alert, and it began preparing for any future encounters. Humanity's design had ensured survival, and this warship was proof, built not for diplomacy, but for protection and retaliation if provoked. The galaxy would remember this encounter, though few would fully understand what they had faced. The warship's existence was a reminder that some dangers were ancient, patient, and unstoppable. The Alien Council debated what action to take next. They considered sending fleets, negotiating, or avoiding Terran space entirely. Every option was weighed against the terrifying power of the dreadnought. Leaders admitted that no matter how many ships they sent, the outcome could not be guaranteed. The Terran warship had shifted the balance of power without firing a single shot. It had awakened, observed, and survived, proving that humanity's threat was real, immediate, and not to be ignored. In the silent aftermath, the alien crew sat in exhaustion and fear. They had survived, barely, but they understood that the galaxy had changed in an instant. What they had assumed to be a simple relic was a living weapon, a monster that had existed for centuries, and they had provoked it by curiosity alone. The dreadnought remained in the shadows of the star system, waiting, watching, prepared to act if necessary. Its awakening sent a warning across space. Humanity had returned, and it was stronger than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy would no longer underestimate what they had once forgotten, and the aliens knew that their encounter was only the beginning of a new, dangerous era.